Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another great week of our arts and arts organizations call. I'm Stephanie Chaiken. I'm the director of the Center for the Arts at New Jersey City University. And our co-presenters are Christine Goodman, the director of the Office of Cultural Affairs in the City of Jersey City, and Heather Warfill-Sandler, who is the chair of the Jersey City Arts Council. So thank you so much for being here. We have a great guests this evening. We have Leonardo Vazquez, who is the founding director of the National Consortium for Creative Placemaking, and Andrea Orlando, who is the community director of the same National Consortium for Creative Placemaking. So I'd like to welcome them and start out by saying, hey, Leo, what is creative placemaking?
Okay. Well, thanks, Stephanie, and hello, everybody. Glad to be joining you all. I actually used to live in Jersey City, right near the Grove Street Path Station. So that was a few decades ago. How many of you are familiar with let me ask this. How many of you are not familiar with the term creative placemaking? And you can just click on the little button there at the bottom right if you're not familiar. No, everybody knows creative placemaking is? Okay, terrific. So there's a few people. Yeah, no, it's a relatively new term. I'll just give you a short description of it. It's about enhancing the quality of life and economic opportunities in communities through arts, local arts, and cultural activities. So what creative placemakers do is we basically are working to enhance everything that makes a community livable. Not only just making it more artful, more creative, but also making it more equitable, more just. We want to promote a greater sense of freedom. We want to create a stronger civil society. We want to promote safety and wellness and health, and particularly in this time when there's so much anxiety, when there is so much uncertainty. This is a time when creative placemakers can take a leadership role in helping communities heal, recover, and become more resilient. And there are multiple ways to do this, just as there are infinite ways to make art, to express culture. There's infinite ways to enhance communities through local arts and culture. But the key thing is what all creative placemakers do is that we try to be really strategic about it. Is we focus not just on what kind of art do we want to do, but what are the impacts that we want to achieve in our communities? And then how can the art making, how can the cultural activities help to achieve that? A good example might be a mural. Now, so many of you have probably been involved in mural making. When murals are done collaboratively between artists and community members, when it's co-designed, when it's co-created with community members, and especially when people can be involved in the actual production of the mural, let's say being involved in the painting, whether it's on canvas or whether it's on the wall itself, it can be an incredibly powerful vehicle for building community, for building trust. However, somebody can also do a mural basically just on their own and slap some, put some paint on a wall, it might be a wonderful work of art, but it might not serve that community focus. So it's not about the product itself, it's the process of making the artwork. And all kinds of arts can be involved in creative placemaking. When we talk about arts, not just the visual arts, culinary arts, performing arts, wide variety, basically any kind of creative activity. And when we talk about cultural activity, we're talking about activities that help express the beliefs, the feelings, the concerns, the aspirations of groups, and having those be presented in the public forum. That helps to build that sense of belonging around in communities, especially in diverse communities like Jersey City. When the public space is so powerful, when you don't feel that when you feel that you're not able to express yourself or express yourself as a member of a certain community in the public space, then you feel at best a second-class citizen. And a good civil society, a healthy community, needs everyone to feel rightly that they have an equitable share in the community, that they are as valued as anybody else in the community. Let me stop right there, and I'll invite you to ask any, to jump in on the chat. I know that there's, let's see how many people we have. We have 27 people, so probably not going to be able to all talk at once, but feel free to speak up in the chat. I know that Jersey City, having lived there and having seen what work has been done there, I know that you all have done some great work around creative placement. I mean, I know about the murals, especially they were around when I was there, and recently we had the chance to meet with is it Duda Penteado? Yeah, Duda Penteado, and the work he's done on the west side of Jersey City, and of course we're hearing about great work that New Jersey City University is doing on the west side. I want to, what I'm going to do today is I want to share with you what is it that makes creative placemaking work. Why are some communities more effective than others in doing the kind of creative placemaking that leads to more equitable, more fair, more open, inclusive communities? But I see there's a question here. I'll stop here. Who typically funds creative placemaking? Do you more often see individual artists initiating these efforts? Yeah, thanks, Caitlin, for these questions. In the United States, there are a variety of funders now. In terms of kind of the big funders, there's the National Endowment for the Arts. There is the Kresge Foundation. There are other large foundations like the Ford Foundation. In New Jersey, the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation has been funding creative placemaking efforts. Now, I don't know. I've got to let you know that I'm not sure that they're taking right now. They're taking any new applications, but they have funded creative placemaking. The New Jersey State Council for the Arts has funded creative placemaking. Down in South Jersey, the William Penn Foundation, which is based in Philadelphia, has done it. Up in Bergen County, Northern New Jersey Community Foundation is doing a lot of work in creative placemaking, especially around Hackensack and Englewood. Now, in Jersey itself, there aren't a lot of grant makers who say we fund creative placemaking. But if you see a funder who's interested in community, in community development, in local economic development, and they're also interested in arts, then you can then you can talk to them about creative placemaking. There are a couple of platforms, crowdfunding platforms, that support creative placemaking, where you can raise money for it. One is, and Andrea, I think it's ioby.com, right?
.org. It's a
.org.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
I just post, yeah.
.org, and another is PDennison, which is a crowdfunding platform for artists. Banks will also support M&T in Jersey. And I think do you have M&T in Jersey City? Yeah, you do. Okay, so M&T supports creative placemaking. Valley, I don't know if you have Valley National Bank in Jersey City, but they support it as well. And they support different things. So the banks and the NEA, they'll support projects, whereas individual projects, and that's what you would use for crowdfunding. Whereas if you're looking for funding for planning for bigger programs, you'd probably look to something like a Kresge, to a Ford Foundation, or to the National Endowment for the Arts Art Town program. Do you often see, so then the question is, do you more often see individual artists initiating these efforts? Yeah, in terms of who starts it, I mean, it almost always starts with an artist, whether they're a professional artist or somebody who may be doing it, as for their own personal benefit. But it always starts with somebody who appreciates the arts, who values the arts. Now, in our case, we've worked. Now, the National Consortium for Creative Placemaking. And I'm sorry that I didn't do an introduction. Now, what we do is we build leaders for this kind of work. And we do that through a number of programs like summits or certificate or webinars, etc., which Andrea can talk about later. We also work with communities. We've worked with more than a dozen, actually almost 24 communities in Jersey and in Louisiana on creative placemaking. And we have two programs. One's called Community Coaching, where we'll work with an organization, a team for 6 to 9 months, and another is called the Strategy Lab, where we work specifically on a specific site for a day or two. And what we find is that the people who reach out to us and the people who do creative placemaking are usually either artists themselves, or they work in arts organizations, or they have some connection with the arts. In terms of leading, who leads these efforts, it really doesn't matter whether it's the artist or somebody else lead, because ultimately what works in terms of leading these efforts is the partnerships. Because the work I'm talking about, it sounds pretty simple. You do some arts projects, and people enjoy themselves, and and everybody's better off. But no, it's a lot harder than that. You're talking about really shaping how people are thinking, how people. You're talking about shaping beliefs. You're talking about encouraging certain behaviors, and so the issues that we're dealing with in creative placemaking, which usually are big issues, they might be around sustainability, issues of poverty, racism, prejudice. They're too big for any one person or one organization or even one industry to handle. The secret of doing this is effective collaborative partnerships. And the secret of having collaborative partnerships is collaborative leadership. Any other questions or comments before I go on? Thank you, Caitlin, for that. When Stephanie asked me to join you all, she asked me to talk about what is creative placemaking, which I've just done, and you could see a lot of examples out there. The work that Duda has been doing on the West Side, working with the students. If you were around right after Sandy, and you saw, if any of you remember the Belmar, where they painted they painted the Jersey barriers. Does anybody remember that? Yes or no? Okay, so what happened was, you've been down to Belmar, right? Used to, for people of a certain age like me, that was the place to go drink on the shore. Maybe it's not anymore. I don't know. Those days are over for me. What happened was Belmar was really badly hurt, and there was destruction everywhere. And so the state put up these big, the big concrete barriers. That's what they call the Jersey barriers. You see them on the highway, like these big, ugly things. Why they're called Jersey barriers, I don't know, but they're called Jersey barriers. Everybody knows them. So people in Belmar are looking at this and they go, "Oh God, this is depressing." And we're seeing just this devastation all over the place. So the Belmar Arts Council was asked by the Belmar Borough Council to work with Belmar residents to paint those Jersey barriers. So the Belmar Arts Council, it's a small town. They got all these people out, and people loved it. Some of those barriers were just beautiful. How they were repainted, how they became canvases, and they, reflected joy and hope, and just created beauty, within this devastation. Now they were able to do that, and they would do that successfully. And I'd encourage you to Google Belmar Arts, because the Arts Council had a very strong positive relationship with the Belmar Borough Council before Sandy struck. So the power of their relationship, the power of their partnership, allowed them to work quickly with in the community. So it allowed them to respond quickly to, so that art could work to help heal the community. This is a good point to talk about. Well, is it always just about doing art in communities? Does that make it creative placemaking? Not necessarily. Do any of you remember Shorehenge? Okay. So Shorehenge, this was in the Highlands. So after, again, this is the Highlands down the shore. So after Sandy, the Concrete Manufacturers Association, I forget what they wanted to honor the people of, the victims of Sandy, and so they decided to pay an architect from the city who'd apparently never been to the shore, to create not a sculpture, but some kind of, it looked like, basically like Fred Flintstone's house, this thing. And it was just all made out of concrete. The ugliest freaking thing you've ever seen. I mean, even people who like brutalist design, would say, "Oh, that's ugly," And the thing that it was put up on, and apparently they put it up without even telling the town that they were putting it up. People hated it. They hated it. It's like, you can have a big concrete thing on the beach in the shore, but you know, it doesn't make sense. So that's an example of something where there was good intentions to do something with art in a community, to honor, to help the community heal, and it did just the opposite. It, you know, actually, in a sense, it united the community because everybody in Highlands hated it. They wanted to tearing it down, actually. You know, a piece of artwork. So, you know, down the shore in Sandy, and again, you can, if you're looking at the chat box, you can see, you know, an example in Belmar of good creative placemaking, and an example of the Highlands of something that was an attempt, you know, to engage art to help a community, and it actually created more hostility than anything else.
So Leo, I wanted to ask you, in terms of something you had said about messaging, getting the right message to your target, can you talk about that on, like, you know, when, if we're talking about the arts and artists would consider something like understanding that message, but someone else wouldn't?
Sure. Okay, no, that, thing about messaging is it's not just about the message, okay? It's about who's saying it, it's about when it's being said, as well as what's being said. And most importantly, it's about what the person who's hearing the message understands, or what they feel about you, what they feel about what's being said, and whether they're in a position to hear it. So we are in a situation right now around the country where, given this, you know, we're basically in a depression right now, an economic depression, and you've probably been hearing about arts being cut all over, arts funding being cut all over the country. You know, if you haven't, it shouldn't be a surprise, because whenever there's a downturn, the arts do get cut. So in terms of the messaging, it is important to express why the arts bring so much value to communities, and not just that the arts bring value, but that the artists and that creative placemaking brings value. Because if you just basically say the arts bring value, people will say, well, you know, there's arts all over the place. Artists will make arts, so we don't really have to do much. But if you express the idea that, hey, you need to have an approach that's very strategic about it, that it's not just putting the arts out there, it's having people working together to address issues through the arts and through local culture, that's going to enhance value. In terms of the types of values for the arts, I mean, I'm sure you know the talking points about the arts, about what value arts brings, the many types of value that arts brings to community. So, you know what? Why don't we, since I've been doing a lot of talking, why don't we? What are the different, what are the different ways that arts bring value to communities? Anybody want to unmute and just speak up? Just everybody's shy. You got. Let me tell you something, folks. You better be prepared to answer this question, because if not, they're going to cut your funding. So what?
I could speak on it.
What? Good, great, thank you.
Well, it can be broken down in a few ways, right? So you have the economic impact, you have the social impact, and you also can have environmental impact.
Okay.
Like the three main sectors, I would say.
Okay, but how does art make the lives of people better? In what ways can, like when you say murals and theater and
I can say
what's the
something.
answer to the so what question?
I can say something around that.
Yeah.
For me, making art is a way of people to express themselves, to get whatever is internal to come out. It's also a way for people to reflect their own community, things that they find valuable. It's able for them to reflect images, colors, events that are important to a group of people or to a neighborhood.
Okay. And let's talk about why is that important? So why
Well,
is it important that
I think
people?
it's important for the morale of a community to see an identity. I think it creates pride in a city. I think it creates pride in where you live. I think it makes people a bit more aware of the value of those that live there. And I think it creates a bit more optimism about your place in the city.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the more our cities our cities heal, recover, and become more resilient faster and more effectively the more people who are involved and we're doing it together. And for people and we can only want to do that if we're motivated to. And we tend to be more motivated to support our communities and to support our cities when we feel that those cities and those communities value us and that we share in those equally. So the art allowing, that mural, those kids painting on the mural or just doing something, even if it's, working in chalk on what they're doing is they're expressing themselves. They're feeling that connection to that place. So thank you, Cal. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts?
We had a hand up from Olga.
Okay. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see everybody. So Olga, yes, go ahead. Olga?
Olga, have you left us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so for me, the most important that arts bring to the community is democracy. I'm artistic director who came Jersey City Theater Center. So I'm someone who came from former Soviet Union. And it's very clear for me is that arts is a very foundation of our democracy. And I believe that giving voices, artists give voices, tell stories and give voices to voiceless. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, it's the most important thing because we know how power corrupts and corrupts very quickly. Doesn't matter how good you are, as soon as you get feel of that power, you're ready to ride on it. And artists are the angels that speak the truth. Those are the people who speak up and tell stories of people. And that's the most important to me personally. And that's why I do what I do.
Great. Thank you, Olga. Yeah. Yeah. And the more people feel empowered, goes back to the more we will support one another. Because government can't do everything. We know that from we know that just from this pandemic that we rely so much on one another. It's sometimes people that we don't know, and so the art helps people feel freer, and people feel more connected to one another. Great, thank you. And other benefits of the arts.
I would say there's been a number of initiatives in Jersey City and Hudson County. I mean, you mentioned just one of them from the mural project. But 14C was I would consider a creative placemaking type of project, more on the economic and access and democratizing that access so that people can show and tell their works and tell about their work as well. There's some recent work that Jersey Theater Center, which I sit on the board on, as the artistic director with work that we do directly in the community, a collaborative work that we do engaging in theater and visual arts, but working with the community so that they are able to tell their stories and showcase their work. Recently, you mentioned Kresge. I know there was a project up in the Heights where they were trying to do some work in trying to identify space so that they could prop up and showcase, some of the local area work there. And so those are just, some of the examples that are ongoing here in the area. Outside of Jersey City, Bayonne also has a lot of activities going on related to concert events, as well as local visual arts type of programming and engaging the community that way, where it hasn't occurred in the past. That's sort of been going on over the last couple of years. And government has been a part of investment in that, from the county and also from the city, because the city supports the mural program. And the county seeds different projects as best they can.
Right.
We don't get enough. And Sam Potts, who's on the call, will attest to that. Because a lot of that funding comes through the county from the state. And we know the state has been under duress as well, because they got to cover a wide range, but we're trying to get more equitable funding up here to support some of the activities that are ongoing.
Great, thanks, Paul. This is yeah. So right now we're in a situation. I haven't seen the Jersey City budget, but I wouldn't be surprised if they'd be looking at, because every city is doing is looking at cuts, organizations. So we talked about some of the benefits, and there's a whole slew of benefits that could, like, as someone said, economic benefits, bringing dollars into communities. I mean, of course, there's an issue of gentrification as well, and that's a conversation as well. But in terms of bringing resources into communities, the environmental benefits, one of the things that there's a strong correlation between place and protecting natural resources, and that sense of artistic love of place and protecting natural resources. But but it's not enough to just be able to have the talking points, because there's a lot of good talking points out there. One of the things that Stephanie asked me to talk with you about, and I'll just talk about this briefly, and then we can certainly open it up to questions, comments, etc., is how do we work together? How do we be more effective? How do we express the ideas? How do we achieve more? How do we make, if we want to make a place better, whatever better means to you all, how do we do that? How do some communities become more successful? Well, I'm going to suggest that there's 4 P's to think about: partnerships, projects, planning, and persistence. Okay, the most important is partnerships. Okay, and when I say partnerships, what do I mean? What is, when you hear the word partnerships, what does it mean to you all? Feel free to chat or say, unmute yourself. Because partnership is a word that people throw around. Yes, go ahead, Heather.
Hi, I'm with Speranza Theater Company, and partnerships is something that we have believed in strongly for many, many years. I see a lot of faces on this call that we've had the pleasure of working with over the years. And for us, what it means is just being able to collaborate on a project. Maybe it's just a one-time sort of thing, or maybe it's more long-term, but it's a collaboration of some sort for us.
Yeah, that's the key thing, collaboration. We work together. We share the risk, reward, the credit, and the blame. Now, arts organizations, people are tend to be very good at working within their communities. I mean, there's competition, of course, in the arts especially, there's competition for audiences, for dollars, etc. But, you work together, we work together, we collaborate on different things. The key for creative placemaking is to build bridges across, is to build partnerships with sectors, with institutions that are not necessarily the arts institutions, with hospitals, with police, with with government especially, with chambers of commerce. I'm sure there's probably some examples, great examples here of your organizations working with people outside the arts. Does anybody want to share any success stories where it's made a difference?
I can share something. For us, partnering with schools in Jersey City has been a major aspect of Nimbus Dance's work over the years. And that's been kind of I think of partnership as a symbiotic relationship where both groups, bring assets or bring advantages to the table, and both groups come away with the benefits of the partnership. But in the work that we've done in the schools, it's provided employment for our artists. It's provided a lot of community ties and ways of connecting with local families and local kids. And then vice versa, for schools, they've gotten, really highly qualified teaching artists to come in and work with their students and give them exposure that they probably wouldn't otherwise have, that has been beneficial to, academic progress, giving students a chance to connect with the arts and potentially lead to further pursuits in the arts for the students. So that's been just I think those collaborations have been very beneficial for our work.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Yeah, that's a great example. Yes.
I can add something here from the government hat, from our cultural affairs perspective, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying about what is the value of the arts and how do we look at that through partnerships. What I think is so exciting about creative placemaking and this conversation we're having now is that it gives us the opportunity to look at these larger picture issues that from the government end we're facing, through all the various sectors, and find creative solutions for, or invent ways of looking at problems differently that only artists and their incredible creativity can bring to the table. And, through Jersey City, we've had lots of wonderful partnerships with a lot of the groups and artists that are on this call now. But one thing that stood out to me, not related directly to Jersey City, were the Bloomberg Public Art Grants. And in particular, there was a project that focused, it just stuck out to me, on blighted neighborhoods and how an artist did these installations of lighting up windows of all the abandoned homes across this network. And it became a conversation, not just an artist installation, but it was really a comment about housing and the state of housing. And there were panel discussions that brought in, the government and many different stakeholders across an entire region. But it was also a very visible installation that sparked conversation and advocacy around an issue like this. So from the cultural affairs perspective, we get very excited about the opportunity to address some of these very large issues with our arts community here. And I'm hoping that this would be one of many conversations around how we can start thinking about creative solutions or sparking conversation creatively around the issues that we're facing now. And we have some pretty big ones ahead of us, and this is a really good place to start. So.
Thank you, Christine. That's a great, thank you for that contribution. That's a great segue to how do you build these partnerships? Because we've all worked with partnerships. We've all probably had, we've probably all had some success. We've also had some failures. Now, here's what I want to tell you about making these work. Just a few things that, they say that you only remember about, after 3 months, only about 10% of what you hear, so if you did, I hope this next thing is one of the 10%. And this is something a friend of mine told me 20 years ago, one of the best pieces of it, or 30 years ago, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. So you can't go to somebody with a mouthful of gimme and a handful of nothing. Okay? And what he meant was that when you ask somebody to partner with you, you have to show, going back to, sorry, you have to express a value, and not what you believe is the value, but you have to understand that other person and what they value. Remember I said earlier, it's not about what you say or how you say or when you say. I mean, it's partly about that. The most important thing is what they understand about you. Do they think you care about them? Do they think you understand them? So we, in the arts world, theater, museum, we hear a lot about meeting people where they are, which means, bringing your performance out, bringing your exhibitions out to communities. It's the same idea when you're trying to build partnerships. It's meeting people where they are. What are they worried about now? What are they thinking about now? And right now we're in a period, and it's probably going to last for another year or so, where people are scared, and a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are anxious. And so the more that you can speak to those things, and the more you can talk about how the arts, how your work can help with healing and recovery and resilience, I think the more successful you're going to be. The other thing about partnerships is that there's always disagreements, there's always tensions, there's always going to be disappointments, and that's why persistence is so important. Any kind of building any kind of relationship is tough, whether it's a personal, relationship that you have with the loved ones, or relationship between institutions. People think in different ways, and the more different they are from you, the harder it's going to be. But the key to getting to solutions is to listen, and to listen with compassion, and to understand that, and to try to understand why people are doing what they do, and not to create the narrative, but to be as open as possible to try to understand things from their perspective. You never can ever see something exactly from somebody else's perspective, but you can at least be, you can, be as empathetic as possible. And then the other thing, projects, having visible successes, doing things that people can say, oh yeah, that's great, is so important. So even if it's a small thing, something small and visible that lets people feel good, that, one of the best ways to build sense of partnership is to do things together. And then the last thing, the last P here is the planning, is that creative placemaking is organic. The work, the successes that I mentioned, it happens organically, but it doesn't happen randomly. There's always some intention behind it. There's some people who are working, to try to achieve some goals. And so what I would say, when you read about some projects that are going on, go behind the project, find out what happened before that led to that project. Okay, I see some comments here. Thank you, Andrea. This is really great. So Paul wrote about creative placemaking project generally started as grassroots project. Absolutely. Paul, that's great. Thank you so much. It's success breeds success. Oh, Kyle, you have a point you want to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear some of your history or some of your projects that have to do with performance. I feel like performance and the visual arts, they come with different kinds of logistics and concerns. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about creative placemaking in regards to performance or site-specific performances, and if you have any history of organizing that.
Sure. Now, our organization doesn't actually do the performance pieces. But I can tell you in planning, for example, Perth Amboy. Perth Amboy, it's a waterfront town, but because of the nature of Perth Amboy, because of the geography of it, there's a lot of people who don't feel a connection to that waterfront. And in terms of protecting that waterfront from it's important for the protection of Perth Amboy to avoid a lot of development on that waterfront. This is the sustainability, the environmental protection. So when we work with the city of Perth Amboy, we said, how can creative placemaking, how can the arts help to protect the waterfront from too much development? Well, the team that we worked with, the group that we worked with, came up with the idea of, said, we could take these empty spaces. There was like an empty ferry launch. They used to have years ago a ferry launch to Tottenville and Staten Island, and let's make that a performance space. And for the last 5 years or so, they've been doing summer concerts there. They've been doing summer concerts at other parks on the waterfront. So the idea there is that the more you get people to the waterfront and the more they see the beauty of it, the more they're going to feel, and the more they're enjoying it, they're going to want to protect it from development. So that's on the performing arts side, and they also do now have the waterfront, the Memorial Day, probably not this year, obviously, but they've been doing for the last 5 years or so, waterfront art, an arts and waterfront festival that celebrates the arts in Perth Amboy as well as the waterfront itself. So one of my favorite examples of performing arts being used to help in healing was in Atlantic City, with the Atlantic City Ballet did a piece that was co-created by residents. I think it was called Into the Storm. Andrea, if you could Google, I think it's Into the Storm and Atlantic City Ballet. There's a great YouTube video about the making of it. So what they did was they got together with residents of Atlantic City and asked them to express their feelings or their experience going through Sandy. Because you remember Sandy hit right near Atlantic City, right? And a lot of these people were not dancers at all, but they were able to express themselves through movement. And then it was, so that became kind of the raw material for the choreographers in the ballet, the Atlantic City Ballet, to create this original piece called Into the Storm. So it was a way of helping with the healing, and also made a really good piece of art. So, and there's a lot of examples. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a question for you. In terms of if we're looking as Jersey City to up our game utilizing placemaking, would the next step be that we would be forming a committee to do placemaking, or each individual? Like, how does a city go about taking a large step?
Sure, and I'll just answer. Thank you. That's an easy question. No, but I'll answer it quickly. The first thing is to really have a shared sense of what does it mean to up your game. What did the thing is look at the end point. What did it first come to an agreement about? What are the impacts? What would, if we say that we're going to make Jersey City a better place to live, work, play, pray, etc. What does that mean? What would a better Jersey City be? And then and really talk about it. And I said, really be open. When we do our work with communities, we know people are very quick to say, here's what I want to do. And we say, no. That's not the first place we start. Where we start is, what do we want to achieve? And then let's come to an agreement about that. Let's build a partnership. And then let's think about, how do we go about achieving it? What are some of the small things that we can do? The short-term things we can do in the next 3 months. What are the things that are going to take a little bit longer? What are the things that are going to take maybe years? We can do everything, but we can't do it all at once. Or we can't do it all right now. So, and then the question is, okay, how do we create a culture of accountability? Now, whether it's a committee, whether it happens through the Arts Council, whether it happens, I don't know, I'm agnostic about it. But what I am evangelical about is that culture of accountability, that if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it, or we're going to at least try. And when we say we could, that doesn't mean you should. That means we do it. Every community is going to be a little bit different. Now, in Perth Amboy and in Glassboro, our work led to new arts councils. You already have an arts council. You could be doing something that in some places, like in Hackensack where we work, there's an arts group that's a kind of a part of the Main Street Business Association. You'll find your own way. The thing I know about working with creative people is you don't tell creative people what to do. You give them goals, and they will find their way. But the key thing is that you do need some structure. You do need something that will, stewardship. This doesn't work without stewardship. Okay, it's not just gonna, there's always going to be projects. There's always going to be that. So, and it's going to take time. And in our case, it can take, we usually say a minimum of 6 months, but in other communities it might take, a year or more to really find what works for you. But that's the persistence. There's some great comments here. One thing that I'm going to say, and I mentioned this to Stephanie, is when you're looking to change things, when you're looking to make change in a community, first understand, why are things the way they are? Have you ever heard the term, the tyranny of custom? Okay. The tyranny of custom is the idea that we do things a certain way because that's the way we've always done it. Because we know how to do it and we feel comfortable. Yeah, I see some nodding heads. Okay, good, good, good. The work that we're talking about, one of the reasons why it's so hard is often we're disruptors. You know, we're asking people to do something new, to maybe take on some vulnerabilities. We're asking ourselves to take on some vulnerabilities. But place, you know, to do placemaking or placekeeping, because that's another term that's, you know, similarly used. We have to really understand, how does this place work and why are things the way they are? And also understand that the way things are the way they are because some people are benefiting from them. And whoever's benefiting from the way things are now is going to be at a minimum inconvenienced and maybe even hurt by the change, any changes that are being proposed. So I'm not saying we'd never change anything. That's impossible. You know, obviously we're not doing that, but we just are aware and that everything comes with trade-offs.
Leo, let me add a piece to that.
Yeah.
Around disruption. Another example, larger than just arts and culture, was another example, what I would say, of creative placemaking, because it involved the complete community in Hudson County. And that was the recent initiative by the Chamber of Commerce, which was a sort of a crowdfunding or online giving initiative called Hudson Gives. But if you, and I'll send you the link to the page. But the one thing that was most exciting about the initiative, in that it focused on the nonprofits in Hudson County. A large part of those nonprofits are arts and culture. Arts and culture are small businesses, and they were the beneficiaries of the platform that the chamber collectively put together from committee members that sat around the table 2 years ago to put this together. So last year, the initiative raised about $127,000 for nonprofits where they could go fish. This year, it was over $340,000.
Wow.
And a lot of the top organizations were arts and cultural organizations. So that's just another way of looking at a different type of creative placemaking, where you're engaging the economic aspect of it and bringing in other people to participate.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I'm seeing we're running short on time, but you know, another thing just to remember, and then I'm gonna, if you'll give me a minute, I'm gonna ask Andrea to just tell you about some of our upcoming activities. Is that if you want people to value you, the more you can show value to them as they see the value, the more that they will value you. Anyway, so I want to thank you for your time. I wish I had more time with you, but I know you got to run. And Andrea, and I hope you don't mind if we do
Leo,
it. Just
before we get to Andrea, we have one more hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I don't. My screen's not big enough to see who's
Sam Pott?
Yeah.
Oh, Sam. Okay, yeah, Sam.
Oh, well, I don't want to open up a whole can of worms right at the end when everyone's trying to get to dinner. I was just going to make the comment that, I think that there's something somewhat unique going on here in Jersey City. I would argue that the notion of creative placemaking is really strong here. I mean, people have been adding comments in the chat here, but I mean, I could rattle off numerous, like really amazing examples of creative placemaking that happen in Jersey City, and I think have been happening for decades,
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
it's a very artistic place and driven, you know, by that's kind of grassroots sensibility of neighborhoods and artists, and, you know, bringing arts to the streets, you know, is, and I think that, you know, what many of us have been kind of butting up against for a number of years has been how to take Stephanie Chaiken's words, you know, how do we up our game? And maybe this is, as you say, Leo, a question of defining what our, you know, what does success look like for us? What are our ultimate goals? But for some of us who have been pursuing, you know, building up organizations that provide regular employment for artists, for example, or who can present their work in a setting that is, you know, like many of us want our work to be presented in a professional type of, you know, performing environment or gallery setting. That takes money, and it does require us upping our game from the kind of grassroots street fair type of art making into a more you know, institutionally funded type of setting. And so I think that, you know, I just want to bring that up. I think that for us, in a way, the question of how do we make the argument that art, you know, or a side of what we're doing here needs more support on an institutional basis in order to reap the benefits that we know that the arts can have on a community setting in terms of, you know, widespread improved educational outcomes, you know, generating jobs and tourism dollars on a larger scale. Those are the types of benefits that I think Jersey City has, you know, not been able to really generate in the way that other communities have, because we've been locked in a way of creative placemaking that has never escalated beyond this kind of grassroots level, which is awesome, but does have its limits in some ways.
Sure. Well, I'll just say quickly, thank you for that. I mean, you know, again, it's what does better mean? What does upping your game mean? Now, the thing about Jersey City is there's enormous wealth in the city. I mean, it's the second largest city in the state. You've got, you know, you get these corporations that are, you know, have offices there. But again, it goes back to the thing is, how do you express, you know, what do they care about? What do they value? What do they, you know, I'm not just talking about the corporations, but, you know, the people who, and how do you talk about how what you're doing will help them? You know, some of your, you know, if some of you remember Jim Croce had this line in the song, he said, "If you're going my way, I'll go with you." So that's the thing, you know, is, and I don't know what the answer is. There's no one answer for everybody. And the only way that you can get to the answer is to really try to understand them. Now, are you going to go to the head of, trying to think of, you know, Goldman Sachs, if they still have that tower there, and I don't know, they jumped from New York to Jersey City every few years, and say, you know, hey, we can do something for you? Maybe not. Maybe you can't get an audience with the head of Goldman Sachs. Or, but there are people there who value arts, you know, and so if you can start building those connections, and those connections can start small, you know, maybe doing some projects. I know a lot of corporations, they look for opportunities, volunteer opportunities for their employees. Start building those relationships, and the more that you can show people that you're helping them get, you know, that you understand them and that you're helping them, the easier it will be to ask for their support. You know, what you're doing is you're not just asking for them to help you, you're asking them to support you so you can help them. If you can make that conversation like that, then you're going to be more successful. But it's also important that there's a power in gumming together as a group to do this, and expressing those ideas. Now, I think it's great that you have grassroots and what they said, the grassroots and grass tops, but that's what it really comes down to. And it works the same whether you're talking about a little town like Belmar or a town like a larger city like Jersey City. I mean, I know that the planning director, Anna, what's her name? Annalise Chilla, I think. Forget what. I'm sorry.
Anicia?
Anicia, yes, Anicia, yeah. She's a friend of the arts. I worked with her back when she was in the private sector. So, the thing is, there's a lot of people who have some connection to the arts because they enjoy it themselves. Everybody enjoys something, but they might play an instrument. They might be, enjoy community theater, etc. So, ultimately, people are people, and it's about building those personal relationships. So, and again, it takes time.
Thank you so much. This is a great conversation that we're starting, and we're not stopping. So that's commitment from us.
So do we have just a sec?
Can you talk about the upcoming, Andrea? Can you talk about the upcoming events you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm so sorry that I didn't give Andrea time.
This is where I get to make the 30-second plug. I mean, in a nutshell, we're a national organization, not for profit, and we exist to serve you. So, and welcome you into a national community of people who are doing similar work. And so we have tons of examples of creative placemaking projects across the country. You can listen to our podcast. We have 31 episodes. Leo does a wonderful webinar once a month, and we invite you to join that. We have a leadership summit, which is going to start with 6 mini summits online and then culminate in an in-person meeting in Philadelphia. We have a couple of spots left at that. And so much more.
And we have a new program called Community Coffee Talks, which is kind of like which Andrea hosts and produces, and it's kind of like our talk show about art,
the next
where you
one,
get to meet people.
Yeah, the next one's going to be about a group of artists who have created a model that allows them to exchange art for much needed medical services. And we're going to ask them how they're adapting during the pandemic. So so that's Thursday, May 28th. Anyway, I know we all want to eat dinner or,
Yeah, so come visit us at cpcommunities.org. And it's great to see Paul and Sam and Duda. Hey, Duda, how you doing? So, great. And to those of you that just met, thank you. And thank you for your time. I hope I was helpful to you. And I wish you good luck. And, we're just around the corner if you need us.
Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Heather has some announcements and
I have no announcements, but we'll keep posting these calls. Just we had the request from the community to try to share the topic, so we've been doing that. If you're on the Jersey City Arts Council email list, you can sign up at jerseycityartscouncil.org. I'm assuming everyone is, since you made it here. And also the morning of the call on our Facebook page, we always post what the topics will be and the speakers. So that's all for now.
Oh, can I ask a question before you? Is the Pancake House still there at the end of Jersey Avenue?
Yes.
Is it still there?
They just changed their name, but I believe they still serve pancakes.
I love that place.
Awesome. Christine?
Nothing more to add except thank you so much for joining us, and I hope we're able to continue this conversation and start thinking about how we can build on our existing partnerships and create new ones. It's really an exciting topic.
Thank you. And if you want to see an example of a plan that process, look at the Perth Amboy Creative Placemaking plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo and Andrea. We'll be in touch for more.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.